Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this evening's council meeting. My name is Councillor Paul de Moldenberg and I am the Lord Mayor of Westminster. In order to ensure the sound quality in the chamber is the best it can be, please try and speak toward the microphone nearest to you and ensure that any papers or devices are not in the way of the microphone picking up your voice. We are live streaming this meeting and therefore the microphones will be active when members are speaking and the cameras will be broadcasting until the meeting closes. I'm aware that there are a few members here this evening nursing injuries. My commiserations to all of you. I wish you all the best in your recoveries, and please don't struggle to stand when asking questions or responding. The cameras and microphones will move to pick you up in a seated position. A list of all the members who are present will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. As this will be a busy meeting, I would like to remind members to be as succinct as possible in their speeches and questions so that we can cover all the items we need to. Before we move to the formal business of the meeting, I would like to take a moment to remember former councillor Harvey Marshall, who passed away last month. Harvey was a councillor from 1990 to 2013, and he was Lord Mayor in 2001. He had responsibility throughout his time at the council for finance, arts and grants, environment, economic development and planning. I knew Harvey before he was elected to the council, and when I was re-elected in 1997, he and I worked together on a number of projects. He was always thoughtful and practical in everything he did. Can I now ask all of you to stand for a minute's silence to remember Harvey? Thank you. Agenda item 1, appointment of relief chair. As I may need to vacate the chair during the meeting, I propose that Councillor Judith Southern be chosen to take the chair as necessary. May I please have a seconder for my motion? Thank you. Councillor Imanles has seconded my motion that Councillor Southern chairs the meeting as necessary. Unless any member objects, the motion will be deemed to be carried. If anybody has an objection, please say so now. Thank you. Councillor Southern, please join me on the dais. Agenda item 2, Minutes from previous meeting. Unless any member wishes to raise a point of order relating to the accuracy of the minutes, I will consider that members are content that I sign the minutes of the last meeting. Please state now if you wish to raise a point of order. Thank you. The minutes are agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 3, Lord Mayor's communications. These are set out in the meeting papers. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. It is necessary to declare any interest in relation to the issues on which there will be a vote. These items were set out alongside the list of speakers on the order paper. Members need to declare an interest in the items selected for debate if they are speaking in that debate. All members in attendance were asked to identify in advance of the meeting if they have an interest to declare. If anyone has any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests to declare, please do so now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. For my speech on councillor issue, I have a shareholding in Octopus Energy, which I'd like to declare.
Thank you, Councillor Pickford. Agenda item 5. There is no statement on urgent business. Agenda item 6. Councillor presented petitions. I'm not aware of any petitions. However, if anyone has one they would like to present, please mention this now.
I have, sir.
Come that later. It's councillor petitions. We'll come to you shortly. Thank you. Agenda item 7, public participation. Each member of the public selected for this item and here this evening has submitted a question or a petition which they will present to the relevant cabinet member. They will have up to 2 minutes to speak, then the relevant cabinet member will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Can I ask our speakers that when you are presenting your question or petition, you adhere to the wording you submitted, which you have a copy of? Can I also ask cabinet members who are responding to be succinct in their responses? There will be no right of reply, and I ask that once speakers have received their response, they return to their seat. All questions asked, petitions presented and responses provided will be made available on the Council's website in the days after the meeting. Can I now ask Stephen Margolis to join us at the front of the chamber to present his petition?
I, the undersigned, call upon Westminster City Council to preserve parking in St John's Wood and the safety of residents on Hamilton Terrace. I am opposed to the design options considered for Hamilton Terrace that would remove well over 100 parking spaces and endanger residents due to unintuitive and dangerous curbside cycle lanes. This is not about anti-cycling. There are almost over 1,000 people, many here, including committed cyclists, who have signed the petition from Hamilton Terrace and neighbouring roads. It's about civic amenity, safety and proper consultation. There will be a loss of over 100 parking spaces. So where should residents and visitors park? What about service and delivery vehicles? There are safety issues. Option 3 means raised curbs in the middle of the road, affecting prams, wheelchairs, walking frames, disabled people, and just crossing the road. What about the need for additional lighting with the speeding e-bikes and scooters coming down? Option 2, what about cars coming out of drives, people having to cross a cycle lane to get to their car, opening of car doors, using the charging points in the lampposts? There is then the legal obligation upon the Council to have proper consultation with the community using relevant data. TfL advertised their work in the South London Gazette, which is not proper consultation. Using average speeds taken before the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit was introduced is not using up-to-date data. Causing cars to back up or drive around looking for car parking spaces is not consistent with Green Agenda. Spending up to £500,000 by the council, which has the second highest level of poverty and 36% of children in poverty, is not spending our money wisely. This is about residents requiring an up-to-date review of the necessity of this proposal and take into consideration the concerns that I have expressed. And if a cycle lane is deemed necessary, then the safest option is option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr Margolis. I will now ask the Cabinet Member for Streets, Councillor Max Sullivan, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Mr Margolis, for coming to present your petition, and to your fellow residents from Hamilton Terrace from doing the same. This is a format that this administration introduced, allowing the public to come and have their say and give questions and challenges in public, and I welcome that challenge. I think that challenge has been really productive, and I hope it'll be productive here tonight. In a minute and 35 seconds, I won't be able to answer everything, and while you don't have a right of reply here, we have an infinite right of reply to pick this up after the meeting, which I'll be happy to do. In terms of the need for safe cycling provision in Westminster, Westminster has the unhappy position of being at the top of the league table when it comes to people killed and seriously injured on our roads, and that is in order of people being killed and seriously injured. That is pedestrians, cyclists in this order, and then motorcyclists, and they're being killed when they come into contact with the drivers of cars, the drivers of good vehicles, and with motorcyclists. So we do have a road danger problem. Westminster is at the top of the league table when it comes to people killed and seriously injured. So there is a need for safe, better walking and cycling infrastructure across Westminster. You talked about option 3. What I would say, and because I know that there's been some confusion about this, we haven't taken a decision on which option we'll proceed with. You're right that there is significant parking loss associated with option 3. There is little or no parking loss associated with option 1 and 2. And option 3 isn't necessarily the best proposal or the one that we'll proceed with. And we'll take every piece of feedback on merit, whether it comes from one person or 1,000 people. The proposal that you're most concerned about, the one that has a median cycle lane in the middle of the road, does have some serious drawbacks and would be a bit of an outlier if we went for it. So what I would say is I haven't gotten the final officer advice in terms of the consultation feedback and what their recommendations are, and I have to take that into account before I make a proper, reasonable decision. But what I will say is that we haven't decided those issues, and option 1 and option 2 have benefits to them as well, and as you pointed out, have much less parking loss. But we do have a clear need to address the very high number of pedestrian and cyclist casualties that we have in Westminster. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to go through every one of your points, but I'll be happy to write to you afterwards and address all of those points at another time.
Thank you,
Okay?
Councillor Sullivan. Thank you, Mr Margolis. Leave that there. We'll pick it up, and you can now return to your seat. Thank you. Thank you. Can I now ask Elliot Keck to join us at the front of the chamber to present his petition?
Thank you. Kendall Street Benches petition. We, the undersigned, call upon Westminster City Council to tackle antisocial behaviour at the benches on Kendall Street.
Thank you. Can I now ask Cabinet Member for Children and Public Protection, Councillor Aisha Less, to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much for your petition, Elliot, and for delivering it this evening. For a long time, the location has faced persistent overnight disturbances, from noise linked to rough sleeping and mental health concerns, to criminal activities of theft, arson and violence. In response, we've taken several measures, including installing CCTV on Kendall Street only 2 weeks ago. Alongside this, an intelligence briefing has been provided to the control room in Hammersmith. Patrols by the Met Police dedicated ward officers have been increased, with a focus on weekends and overnight hours. Police have also engaged with people drinking in the area, who disperse voluntarily on the occasions that they have been present. We're also putting up signage to support the enforcement of the street drinking public space protection order and to support local monitoring. Residents and councillors have been encouraged to report ASB and other breaches. Infrastructure changes to deter antisocial driving and loitering will be looked at in the next phase if necessary. In the meantime, my focus is on continuing collaboration between council teams, the police, the local stakeholders to ensure a coordinated response to crime and ASB in this area and across Westminster. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Keck. You may now return to your seat. Can I now ask Nicholas O'Shaughnessy to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question.
Lord Mayor, councillors, on behalf of the residents of Chagford House and Chagford Street, we would like to ask why a permanent solution cannot be found to keep Chagford Street litter-free. We have copious photographic and video evidence showing how badly littered Chagford Street is with debris and detritus, whilst on the same days Glentworth Street is litter-free. It would help if Glentworth Street residents had their refuse collected from their own street, not from ours, but we want to highlight that Chagford Street does not enjoy the same level of cleaning as Glentworth Street. Chagford Street is only cleaned about once a week. We request that Chagford Street, ideally, is thoroughly swept 7 days a week in line with Glentworth Street, and that it is regularly weeded. We will also request the rubbish bins be placed at either end of Chagford Street. As we all know, London once had a lot of rubbish bins, but the IRA campaign rather changed that. We would like to see a return. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll now ask the Cabinet Member for Streets, Councillor Max Sullivan, to respond.
Thank you for coming and thank you for asking your question. So I firstly to say that clean streets in our city is the top priority for me in terms of what we're delivering as a council, because it's so important to how people feel about their streets, but also accessibility when it comes up to how people get around their area. It's not just e-bikes and other things that are an issue. It's also fly tipping and litter that can be an issue as well. In terms of the specifics that you've brought here tonight, the council's cleansing service has, you're right, doesn't have a 7-day-a-week schedule for Glentworth Street, but it has a 5-day-a-week schedule from Monday to Friday for Chagford Street. And I appreciate that might, that perhaps seems unfair that neighbouring streets have different arrangements, but we draw up those schedules and allocate those resources based on need, considering a wide range of factors, including what commercial premises, what transport interchanges, what vehicular traffic and overall pedestrian footfall that streets have. So I have asked officers in response to your question to look at the service level here to ensure that everything we're doing is appropriate and to high standard. Weeding cobbled streets is a particular challenge during spring and summer. I've asked the local area manager monitors the street more closely for weeds from now on. On litter bins, I know that there's currently a litter bin on the corner of Glentworth Street and Malcolm Street that serves a parade of shops there, and I've asked officers to look at the provision of litter bins in line with that part of your question to check if provision is adequate. More widely, though, I am proud of our record. I talked at one of our last meetings about the very comprehensive survey that was done by Keep Britain Tidy across 1,000 sites in Westminster, and it does show substantial improvements in recent years. The percentage of streets failing the council's high standards have nearly halved since 2021-2022, with overall falls in the rate of detritus, fly tipping, and street staining too. But we do need to look at every area. We've only achieved that by looking very closely at every area and the feedback we get from residents. So I really welcome that you came here tonight and you've raised those issues. And as I said, we're taking all those actions to make sure there's sufficient provision in addition to the 5-day-a-week cleaning schedule that we have for your street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Mr O'Shaughnessy has now already returned to his seat. Can I now ask Andrew Fermanagh to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question.
Is it likely that leaseholders would be required to move out during works for Pimlico District heating undertaking upgrades? And if so, how long might it be for, and what plans are in place to manage this?
Thank you. I will now ask the Cabinet Member for Housing Services, Councillor Lisa Begum, to respond.
Thank you for your question, Andrew. Firstly, I just want to reassure you and other Pimlico residents supplied by the PDHU that minimising disruption to them is at the heart of this project. Indeed, that is the very reason why we need to deliver a new heating system, because the disruption to residents of ongoing leaks and the property damage and water disruption it brings is completely unacceptable and unsustainable. Minimising disruption to residents has been central to the evaluation of options for replacing the PDHU so far, with one of the highest scoring considerations in the critical success factor analysis being the avoidance of disruption to residents. All of the options currently that are being assessed as part of the outlined business case involve major works inside homes, and they are all likely to require some residents moving out temporarily for short periods to allow safe access and installation works. However, the details of anything like this will be determined by the option selected and the programme taken forward, and at this stage, no decision has been made on that. The Council will only know about any temporary decanting needed once we have finalised detailed designs and construction sequencing, which is some way off. Our priority in all of this is to minimise disruption wherever possible, and I can reassure you that we will make sure that residents can remain in their homes during works unless a short-term move is absolutely necessary for safety or access reasons. As ever, when any of our major works require unavoidable temporary moves, the Council will work closely with every affected household to provide full support, including advance notice, assistance with packing and transport, and suitable temporary accommodation within the local area wherever possible. When we reach the stage of the process where the expected impacts of the works on residents are known, the Council will develop a comprehensive resident support and mitigation plan ahead of the construction period. That plan will set out clear notice periods, additional help for vulnerable residents, access to welfare and advisory services, and dedicated points of contact so that everyone knows what to expect and when. I, of course, recognise that major works of this scale and the associated disruption can cause considerable and understandable anxiety. That's why we are committed to managing the process in a way that is transparent, fair, and supportive for all residents. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Mr. Fermanagh, thank you. You may now return to your seat. Can I now ask Wendy Baverstock to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, councillors. Could you please confirm whether Westminster City Council and its partners are considering any works or design changes at Hyde Park Corner to address the current congestion and conflict between pedestrians and cyclists, particularly during peak times, as the shared pathways appear to be operating at or above capacity?
Thank you. I will now ask the Cabinet Member for Streets, Councillor Max Sullivan, to respond.
Hello, thank you, Wendy. Thank you for coming to ask your question. I am aware of this. It's something, obviously, I've encountered regularly as a pedestrian, as a cyclist on my way to Westminster City Hall in Victoria on a regular basis. And it is land that is the responsibility of TfL and parts of it responsibility for the rural parks. We have had a good working relationship in sorting out some of the conflict issues of shared space elsewhere in the park by convening those groups and bringing them together. There wasn't always a great working relationship in the past between Westminster and the rural parks and TfL on those issues, but we've actually managed to make some progress on the north and south ends of Hyde Park. So I'm picking that up with them, and there has been, I think it's fair to say, there's been some concerns and resistance from the partners due to the kind of heritage nature of the area to putting in segregated meshes. But I think, like we've all seen, as you say, it's at an overcapacity, particularly at peak times, which is, you know, a good problem to have in some ways. You've got lots of people walking, you've got lots of people cycling, but we need to put maximum pressure on those partners to deconflict that space as much as possible. So I have asked officers to convene a meeting again with TfL and the Royal Parks to progress this further. Unfortunately, we can't take action for them; it's their land, but we will do what we can to bring them together to bring about a resolution to that problem. And thank you again for your question.
Thank you. Ms Baverstock, you can now return to your seat. Thank you. Finally, can I ask Rose Doyle to join us at the front of the chamber to ask her question? Hello, Rose.
Good evening. I'm partially sighted and I cannot cycle nor drive. The bus, and for many blind and partially sighted people, is the only means of independent travel. My experience and understanding of floating bus stops is that the majority of cyclists do not stop at the zebra crossing, even when the stop design complies with TfL standards. Additionally, tactile paving, etc., cannot help blind people detect silent, fast-travelling cycles. The space around these bus stops is chaotic. The bus announcements to passengers tell you to be cautious. TfL published a review in 2024 conducted in lockdown. It was a review of the safety of sighted people. It did not consider the access needs of blind people, nor did it recognise the British Standard 8300/1 published in 2018. The British Standard says pedestrians should be able to access bus stops without crossing cycle routes. How will blind people travel independently to and from Portland Place by bus if the council were to install floating bus stops there?
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. I will now ask once again the Cabinet Member for Streets, Councillor Max Sullivan, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Hi, Rose. Thank you for coming to answer your question. It's a very important issue that you raise, and I think it's good that TfL did this study, but as you're right, there can always be better and wider engagement with people who are partially sighted, visually impaired. That's why I've been very keen to speak to the user groups who are most affected by this issue, including Transport for All, Wheels for Wellbeing. I spoke very recently to someone who's partially sighted and has the use of a guide dog, and we talked about issues on our pavements and access to bus stops and public transport. It's absolutely crucial that we get this right, and I think we've seen instances where local councils and TfL have not got this right in terms of the design of floating bus stops. I think you saw that with the temporary measure now being replaced with permanent measures on Park Lane, where you had bus stops on the pavement and then people having to get off and cross the live cycle lane on the zebra crossing to get to their bus when it arrived, right? Which is clearly not a sustainable position for people. So it's good that they've moved the stops onto the issue. You're right that even with the approved TfL design, we do have an issue with people on bikes, significant proportion of people on bikes not stopping as they should at zebra crossings. As we have an issue, to be honest, with compliance rates at zebra crossings more generally with people on bikes, but also people in cars. And we do have an issue, 80 to 90% compliance of zebra crossings might be okay for fully sighted, able-bodied people, but for people who can't see what's coming, that's a very different, 10 to 20% chance of a car or a bike not stopping is a very, very serious risk. So on Portland Place, we're looking at designing at least to the standard that's there, if not exceeding it. And by exceeding it, I mean we're looking at bringing in other more experimental measures, enabled by camera detection, ways of improving that beyond what's there. But to come back to the question I answered earlier, we have a massive problem with pedestrians and cyclists being killed by cars and buses and goods vehicles. And what bus stop bypasses are there to do is to remove a conflict which is very deadly. Cyclists are much more likely to be killed by buses and coaches than they are by almost any other kind of vehicle. And it's to create that environment where people of all abilities, me with my son, people who are disabled who want to use a cycle, an adapted cycle to get around, are able to use our city. So you're right, there is a conflict there that we need to deal with and we need to sort out seriously and listen to the issues. But I also want to recognise the need that we have for safe infrastructure that means that people on foot and bike are not being killed by buses in our city. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. You may now return to your seat. That was the last question in this item. I want to thank all members of the public for taking time to participate tonight. If you'd like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're more than welcome, but you need to make your way to the public gallery just further up. If you're leaving us now, I wish you a good evening, and thank you again for your attendance here tonight. Agenda item 8, questions. There are 45 minutes for questions. Will all members wishing to ask a question please indicate now and continue doing so until your request has been noted by the Chief Executive and the Executive Director of Corporate Services. Please remember that questions may be asked of a Cabinet member or a committee chair. I will call members who indicated that they wish to ask a question after Councillor Swaddle has asked his 3 questions, and questions and responses should be brief. Have we got the list of everybody who wants to speak? Just about. Okay. Okay. Councillor Swaddle, please now ask your 3 questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Fair Funding Review exposes Labour's failure at every level. It slashes budgets by 700 million from councils, and Sadiq Khan continues to drain resources from inner London. This council stays unnecessarily silent while the people of Westminster are being squeezed. It is Westminster's most vulnerable that will be impacted worst. The leader's slow and confused approach to the Fair Funding Review has left Westminster on the back foot. Signing a letter is one thing, showing leadership through action is another. Will he now back words with action and stand up to this Labour government by fighting for a fair funding formula that recognises Westminster's real pressures before our most vulnerable residents pay the price?
Councillor Hugg.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. To be absolutely clear, I've not only been leading this work on behalf of the City Council, but on behalf of Central London as part of a cross-party coalition that is standing up for this part of our city. We are very conscious of the real challenges that local government funding has been left in after 14 years of Tory government. However, we are also clear that we have enormous needs in central London that had not been picked up fully by the versions of the Fairer Funding Review that were put out in the summer. To be clear, under both administrations, Westminster always expected and planned for a reduction in income, as he knows from his time as the Cabinet member. However, we are clear that there is more that needs to be done in the here and now to defend the interests of Westminster and Central London as a whole. I am heartened that as a result of the lobbying that I and others have conducted, the government has now changed the formula for the index of multiple deprivation to fully include housing costs, which was the #1 campaign ask not only of Central London Forward but of London councils as a whole, which will better reflect the real social needs that Westminster has, because we're very clear that Westminster, alongside having areas of extreme wealth, has some of the poorest parts of the city, and we have made that case to government repeatedly, and I have been doing that both publicly and privately over the months since the first Fairer Funding Review has been set out, and I will continue to do that until the final decisions are made. And I've been again in contact with ministers only today on issues relating to that, and I will continue to do that both on behalf of the City of Westminster and on behalf of Central London as a whole, as part of that cross-party coalition.
Thank you. Councillor Swaddle, supplementary?
Yes, Lord Mayor. The leader's weak and delayed responses to the Fair Funding Review say everything about Labour-led Westminster. Too afraid to challenge the Mayor, too timid to challenge their government.
Are you listening to the answer?
Even when the most vulnerable residents are left behind. Will the leader set out what actions he will take going forward beyond photo opportunities and signing letters to publicly stand up for Westminster, or is dithering and delay the only answer under Labour?
I think that was the same question again, but I will give a similar answer. We have publicly set out, on behalf of central government, in a range of different publications, Westminster's position. I've spoken to the media about the concerns that we have. I'm again talking to BBC London on Friday. That is in addition to all the work I'm doing with officials and with ministers and MPs, working closely with our MPs, Joe Powell and Rachel Blake, your local MPs, who are working very hard on behalf of the local community to make the case for central London. So absolutely, we want to see a better, fairer funding deal for us that reflects the real challenges we've had. As I said, so far there has been progress in terms of better reflecting the impact of housing costs in deprivation, which will assist with Westminster's figures. But there is more to do over the coming weeks and months, and we are, as I said, constantly talking to ministers, MPs and officials alongside making clear our concerns in a public forum that is clearly not behaving as if just purely partisan bashing as Councillor Swaddle would like, but being very clear that even though we recognise the real challenges the government faces in terms of repairing the public finances and ensuring that money is invested in local government across the country, that the needs of central London are not forgotten because of that, because of a range of different things, including the significant deprivation that exists in Westminster alongside that wealth, but also the important role that Westminster plays delivering growth for the national economy. So I will continue to set out publicly and privately our case for Westminster and for central London as a whole, because we are the growth engine of this country and we want to play our part to help the country, but we cannot be in a situation where our local people are losing out substantially. More than certainly recognising that the previous government already planned significant reductions, as he knows from his own budget.
Thank you. Councillor Swaddle, your second question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'm glad that just wasn't filibustering there. A question to the leader on illegal short-term lets. These are out of control across Westminster, leaving residents to deal with dirty streets, disruptive late-night parties and a revolving door of strangers tearing up the fabric of our communities. Westminster is not prioritising enforcement, instead it's prioritising pet projects over residents' needs. Sadiq Khan talks tough, and Labour in Downing Street have dithered and delayed the registration scheme. Will the leader explain why Labour-run Westminster continues to ignore the widespread breaches of the 90 days rules, and when residents can expect real enforcement rather than more press releases and excuses?
Councillor Hurd.
I read Councillor Swaddle's own press release with interest on Monday, and he has got his facts very, very muddled. The reality is that his team, when we came into the council, there were 2 enforcement officers that the Conservatives had left in post. There are now 5. Despite his own press release claiming that this administration cut it. No, we did not cut them, Councillor Swaddle, you cut them. We've increased them. There are now 5 full-time officers in addition to the head of service who are also working on this issue, whereas you left it with 2, so you're just flat wrong about what this council has done, and I hope that you will retract the statement that you put out on Monday because it was simply inaccurate. I look forward to that retraction. But very clearly, we've also been not standing idle in terms of campaigning on this issue. Again, I know Councillor Swaddle does like a press release. I have not been short of them on this particular issue over the last couple of years, raising attention to the real issues that we have in Westminster and across central London, bringing a coalition of local boroughs together to press the government for action. And unlike the previous government that kicked the can down the road, obviously, and after having brought in this problem through their deregulation bill in 2015, this government is actually taking action, and it's not going to do what the previous government was going to do of give permitted development for all of the short-term lets, which was literally what your team were about to do. But the government is introducing a registration scheme. Rachel Blake, Joe Powell, and I were on a call with the senior officials at DCMS who are introducing the scheme only last week to ensure that Westminster's needs are listened to in the rollout of the registration scheme that will be being delivered from early next year. That is real action that this government has taken after 10 years of Tory chaos created by their deregulation bill. So we've been acting. We have been acting at a Westminster level to do the enforcement that you cut. We have been taking action publicly to build the case for action from government, and this government has listened and is bringing in the registration scheme next January that your government signally failed to do.
Supplementary, Councillor Swaddle.
Yes, Lord Mayor. Yes, the Conservative government did bring forward the scheme for registration that Labour then have dithered on since. We want more than superficial answers. We want members of Parliament. Does what we want, and we call on the leader to support, is actual prosecutions on short-term lets now and stronger enforcement, rather than moving forward lots of cases by a small amount, moving one or two forward to publicly show that this council is going to take action. The 90 days rule can be enforced, and you should enforce it. Will you?
Well, obviously, Councillor Ormsby and the team can come back to you with more specific details, but the reality is we have been taking cases to court and we have been getting action. We have obviously dealing with we don't want to ignore the residents who raise concerns about this problem, but we have been taking targeted action. We've been working with the platforms to get information taken down, and we've been pursuing stuff through legal measures. So we're all sorts of different pressure through that, and we are proud that the team that we have substantially increased from the team that you cut is taking further action. But as we know, we need registration and then ultimately licensing from the government to help us deliver real change. There was no scheme for registration the previous government had. That is simply untrue. The government has moved at pace in response to the campaigning by myself and other London leaders to take action. And that is being rolled out over the course of the next year. So I hope you will welcome that, despite the fact that you cut the previous team. And I, again, look forward to that retraction for your misstatement earlier this week.
Thank you. Councillor Swallow, your third question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Labour like to talk a lot about fairness, but their version of fairness always leaves Westminster residents paying more. Now the Chancellor is openly talking about a so-called mansion tax. In Westminster, where ordinary family homes cost over £1 million, this so-called mansion tax wouldn't target the super-rich. It would target hard-working people, hammering ordinary Westminster homeowners, long-term residents and pensioners who've worked hard all their lives, just to fund Labour vanity projects and symbolic motions. In a city where the ordinary home is over £1 million, does the leader support his Chancellor's plans to introduce a so-called mansion tax, and will he recognise that it would push hard-working families and pensioners, discourage aspiration and tax success here in Westminster?
Councillor Hugg.
Thank you very much. Obviously, I too have read the speculation in the media over the weekend, and as a result have been in close contact with again, with ministers and officials about the real concerns that we would have were something like what was being floated in the press were to come to pass. We know the reality of life here in Westminster is more complex than can be presented very tritely in some of the media. For example, there are many hundreds of council homes that are in Band G, and a number in Band H as well. And we know that there are people in the private rented sector and pensioners who could be potentially significantly impacted were the government to introduce a blanket change like this. To be clear, the council under both administrations had made the case for reform to higher band council tax. Indeed, I was seeing earlier this week the paper that Councillor Kaplan produced back in 2014, making the case for an additional band I and J above band H, and there's always been cross-party support for that, provided that the revenue came to Westminster, or was at least considered as part of the overall funding formula. And obviously, we are concerned by measures that would potentially break the link between local taxation and local investment. So, look, we are concerned about this. As I said, I've been making my own representations to ministers over the last couple of days, and we will continue to do so. As I said, I know the Leader of the Opposition has just handed me a letter just now that he's writing to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Again, I've been writing my own letter as well, and I'm sure that we can all put pressure on the Treasury to make them aware of the real issues that we have here in Westminster. We want to make sure that any impact of any changes is fully understood, and we will make that case on behalf of the people of Westminster.
Supplementary, Councillor Swaddle.
Yes, Lord Mayor. I welcome the leader's acknowledgement that cross-party working is important, and I hope that he will join me in signing this letter. Join me in signing this letter, so that we can present a joint front to the Chancellor and explain to her why this is a terrible Labour tax.
Thank you.
Thank you. Possibly there may be some tactical differences in this approach, but we are aligned in the agreement that were what was announced in the press we brought in, it will be extremely challenging for the people of Westminster. I think we are very, very clear that any changes to higher value tax would need to be done in such a way that local people were to be the beneficiaries of it, and that people on lower incomes were protected, lower and fixed incomes were protected, and those are real concerns. And obviously set against the broader local government finance situation. So I said I've drafted my own letter. Obviously, Councillor Hall has drafted his. I'm sure we can both make our representations in our own way to maximise the different perspectives that we bring to this. But we're united in the fact that this shouldn't go ahead as was floated in the press.
Thank you. Councillor Regan Huck. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. My question is for Councillor David Boothroyd, Cabinet Member for Finance. What progress has there been on the external audit of the City Council's accounts for 24-25?
Councillor Boothroyd.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, so what's some power the gift he gives to see ourselves as others see us, as the poet put it. I'm happy to report that in 6 weeks of public inspection of our accounts, no objections were raised. External audit of the annual accounts for Westminster City Council for the financial year 2024-25 was completed on the 24th of October, which made us, I think, one of the first 10 councils in the country to have an audit opinion. Westminster residents can take reassurance that under Labour leadership, our external auditors have formally recognised the positive engagement and support provided by the authority's finance team throughout the audit, and that the external auditors have said that they will give an unmodified, that is, unqualified opinion that the accounts give a true and fair view of our strong financial position.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, I'd like to ask what the result was of the external auditor's check on the value of the money arrangements.
That's a very good follow-up question, because the external auditors do not just look at the figures in the accounts. They are also required to report on whether the council has put in place proper arrangements to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in its use of resources. I'm happy to let residents know that the external auditors said arrangements for financial sustainability remain strong. Governance arrangements remain robust, and Westminster outperforms similar councils in generating fewer complaints and maintains high standards across a range of services. Now, when the external auditors do this, they come up with recommendations to see if you can do even better. When the external auditors looked at Westminster and asked themselves if they could think of any recommendation, anything that we weren't doing that we might be able to do, they didn't even have one recommendation to make.
Councillor Paul Fisher.
Huge growth in the use of synthetic opioids across London at the moment. And that includes, of course, among rough sleepers. 73% of rough sleepers, unfortunately, will use drugs during their time on the streets and resort to drugs during their time because of their vulnerability. Because of the significance of the growth of synthetic opioids, I've noted there is no strategy in place at the moment at the council level. Will you commit to producing one in the short term?
Councillor Begum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. I am sure that my colleague Nafsika will look into this, because this is public health, and I would be more than happy to work with her alongside our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy, and work with our partners as well. And we work closely with our partners, and we support people on the streets who are taking drugs and trying to bring them in a pathway of housing.
Thank you. Supplementary?
I'm not certain that was a yes or a no, but I'll continue
The drug
anyway.
and alcohol structure.
The Cabinet member will also know that in October, the Council announced it was going to be in the receipt of £2.35 million of funding, which is to be welcomed, in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping. But as far as I can tell from the public announcement of that funding, less than 4% of that £2.35 million is going to be spent on and allocated to the problem of substance abuse. Given the problem that's emerging on the streets of London and the threat to both rough sleepers and residents in the City of Westminster, does she not agree that that grossly underestimates the threat that's posed in the coming months and years?
Councillor Begum.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to look at all our allocations on rough sleeping. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Most of this is public health. We do have a...
It's at least a joint, surely it's a joint responsibility, Councillor.
We do have a drug and alcohol strategy, which I'm sure you're aware of.
That doesn't recognise the specific threat posed by nitazene on the streets of London.
Thanks, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Tuzal.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Finance and Council Reform. Many homes in Westminster are used as second homes by people who mainly live elsewhere or abroad. How do we ensure their owners are contributing to the cost of local services?
Councillor Boothroyd.
Thank you for the question. Yes, Westminster is a lively local community, but among our residents there have always been some who live in Westminster only part of the time and have a main home outside the city. We acknowledge there are legitimate reasons for doing that, but we also think that it's fair in the middle of a housing crisis. It's reasonable to ask a bit more from people who don't make full use of their home in Westminster. And so we have been charging a premium since the last budget, and it has brought in a decent income, slightly more than we were anticipating, to this council. I do note that the Conservative Party in Kensington and Chelsea did not do the same thing, but have been shamed by the RBKC Labour group into introducing a similar charge starting next year.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Have we identified how many second homes we have in Westminster?
No, we haven't. Because there is no national register of second homes, up until now it has largely been left to the honesty of the homeowner in coming forward. Now, I believe most people are fundamentally honest, but only most. So the team in Westminster, the revenues team, have been proactively looking for second homes that have been hitherto undeclared. Additional income from second homes goes to support services for everyone in Westminster, including those who do not live here, just visit. But it also helps us keep the general rate of council tax down, which is this council's priority.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Galley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to ask the Cabinet Member for Highways a couple of follow-up questions on C51. As far as I'm aware, the Council haven't provided any data at all around the number of injuries to either pedestrians or cyclists on Hamilton Terrace. Would the Cabinet Member not agree with me that it seems highly unreasonable to extrapolate Westminster-wide data for what is a very quiet residential street? And will he commit to providing the data that they are using to justify these plans?
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I'll commit to providing that data. And the data on all casualties, including the verified data up to 2024, is publicly available. I'll be happy to point you to the dashboards that are held by TfL, where you can search and find all that information. Right now, you can, yes, specifically for Hamilton Terrace, you can zoom in at any level you want and find out that information, but I'd be happy to furnish it with you, to you as well. In terms of, I think, your point, which is there a specific road danger risk on Hamilton Terrace that if we do something about it will solve all casualties and collisions in Westminster? Absolutely not, that's not the case. But what we need to provide, and it is really starting from a bare bones safe cycling network across Westminster, because they are the group most injured and second most seriously and fatally injured on Westminster's roads, and providing a bare bones safe network for people to get around and across the city is essential to that, and that means that needs to happen. That needs to happen on a number of our streets. It's not going to mean that we need to have protected cycle lanes on every street, not anything close to it. What we need is to start with is a minimum viable network of safe cycling routes which can provide that provision. And it's not while obviously I take the point that I talked a lot about serious injuries and casualties, I'm prevented at the moment from taking trips that I would like to take by bike, and I've spoken to many people for whom that is the case. There are oh well, you might sigh now, but when we ask Westminster children what they say, many of them would like to be able to walk and cycle to school and cannot because their parents don't feel that they can let them. So I think across the city, my point is we need a safe network across the city. And if we provide that safe network, there are many trips that people will be able to take that they're not currently able to take. It's about giving people more choice in their access to transport and giving that choice to everyone of all abilities. So thank you, and I'll be happy to furnish you with that information and commit to sharing that information transparently with you.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm a cyclist. I love cycling on Hamilton Terrace because it is so quiet. You're very welcome to come on a cycle ride with me if you would like to see it for yourself, because I don't think you know the street very well. I'm also going to provide you with some data as well. So according to your own council data, the daily traffic volume for Hamilton Terrace is 3,000 vehicles in each direction. By that estimate, and in line with the London Plan and Westminster's own local implementation plan, an advisory cycle lane is considered entirely appropriate. So I want to work with you. We all want to see safer cycling in Westminster, but it does not warrant segregated cycle lanes, raised cycle lanes, or anything like that.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Obviously, I can't claim to live on Hamilton Terrace. I do take umbrage at the idea that I don't know the street, of course, but let me read you the words of an email I received today, completely unsolicited views. I have lived, I'm not going to name this person because I don't know if they want to be named, but I'll be happy to share it with, actually, many of you actually have this email because you were copied on it earlier. Who am I? I lived for 27 years, I have lived for 27 years in Hamilton Terrace and Abercorn Place, and I'm a Westminster taxpayer and voter. I'm a foremost pedestrian user of common transport. I've also been a cyclist for the last 25 years. I'm also a car owner that is parked on the street. I'm not a member of a cycle pressure group. I do not appreciate the tactics by the petition supporters, especially the fake parking ticket on our car windscreen. I'm shocked by the use of the Westminster City crest. I do not appreciate random accusations about a bicycle lobby from across Greater London. There are cyclists in Hamilton Terrace, in NW8 and in St John's Wood, and we don't live in a community that ostracises visitors, commuters or non-NW8 road users. I wish the councillors can opt tonight for a sound C51 solution in a non-partisan manner. This is your resident. If you want to shout the words down, go for it. That would support cycling, maximise safety and minimise disruption for other road users. So those are the words of someone who knows Hamilton Terrace very well, who's lived there for 27 years. I don't doubt that people will disagree on how we get this. But what I challenge you to say is, if you believe in safe cycling, and I appreciate that you feel confident cycling, but many people of different abilities, including families and people with children, won't be able to use the network as it is. So my question to you is, where are these metaphorical, rhetorical question, if you will. My question to the air, to the room, to the royal we, is where exactly is this principle of supporting cycling showing up in practice? Name me one scheme, one lane, one road on which you support a single scheme that we have implemented, or in fact that you yourselves implemented when you were in power. You can't point to one. You like standing on the side of the road and saying you don't like stuff. You don't like coming up with plans.
Thank you. Councillor Iman Les.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for the Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology, Culture and Air Quality. Could we please have an update on our action to fight climate change?
Thank you very much, Councillor Les. Is that working?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Les. I'm really pleased we recently published our updated climate-based action plan and the progress report, which shows the actions between 2022 and 2025. I'm sure you've all read it, but the headlines very quickly are that Since the declaration of the climate emergency back in 2018-2019 baseline, we've had a 34% reduction in emissions. Now, I know you're all thinking that's cross-party work that's happening, which is obviously fantastic to see. But the data shows that in the first 3 years, we only reduced by 7%. But since this administration came in, we've had a 27% reduction in our climate emissions. And the progress report sets out a lot of how this has happened and some of the stuff that I'm proudest of. And I was actually really pleased to shoot the launch video next to an air source heat pump at Queen's Park Library that this administration had installed, is the work that's gone on in our corporate property. And just last week, we celebrated 100 years of Porchester Hall, Councillor Sandquist there announcing that. And again, we talked about the air source heat pumps we've invested in there, the LED lighting, and all the ways that we're reducing our emissions behind the scenes in our own property. So we're making good progress, and I recommend everyone looking at the Climate Emergency Action Plan if we want to see how we're going to keep making progress over the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary.
So on progress, is there anything that you can tell us about what progress might look like?
So obviously there's actions constantly ongoing, but some of the things that we're expecting to be able to announce imminently, I'll name two of the big ones. So one is our Sustainable City Charter, which everyone is aware of. It's where we get independent businesses in Westminster to sign up to a voluntary commitment to reduce their emissions. The second year of annual reporting is about to be released. Last time we saw a 19% reduction in carbon intensity for those who reported over the first year, so I'm hoping we're going to see similar sort of progress in the second year of reporting. Then the second one, something that has often irked me before we got elected and then just post the election, was our carbon offset fund not being used as efficiently as possible. And we've spent millions in the last couple of years. But over the summer, we revamped this as the Westminster Climate Fund, and I was delighted that we had over 80 applications for the £5.5 million that was on offer in this application round. We were oversubscribed by quite a substantial amount, but we're going to shortly be announcing all the projects that have received funding from that. And this spans everything from retrofit to community energy to supporting some of our most historic buildings here in the city. So watch the space for that soon.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Mitchell.
Lord Mayor, thank you very much indeed. Question to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Public Protection. While recognising the ongoing and constructive work between the City Council, Westminster Street Performers Association and the Musicians Union to achieve a solution for buskers' pitches, and the Mayor of London's recently stated support for all efforts to ensure performers have access to viable and high-profile pitches across the city, the short notice closure of the Trafalgar Square busking pitch for the festive season, combined with a ban on busking in Leicester Square, which you're very familiar with, is having a dire impact on amplified buskers who are unable to work as a result. In light of this, what assurances can the Cabinet Member give that the Council are urgently looking for a viable option at this critical Christmas period for buskers, as well as commit to looking at longer-term options for suitable amplified pitches in 2026? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Less. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Mitchell. As you know, the global radio case went to court, and the ruling was to suspend those two pitches in Leicester Square earlier in the year. The judge ordered the local authority to stop the nuisance that was caused by noise playing of music by buskers playing in Leicester Square. So it put us in a really impossible position to suspend those two pitches. We are going to court. I can get you dates for that to look at the order of the paper, because I think there were some discrepancies on the paper that we wanted to clear from our side and to make it very clear. And as you know, we want to encourage all our buskers to enjoy busking in the West End and in Westminster, because it is it's very much part of what we do in Westminster and in the West End, and it's something that visitors and businesses and residents enjoy. Some of them do enjoy that anyway, but it is part of our arts and culture in the West End. But as I said, I can share further details with you offline around the next court date for that.
Councillor Mitchell, supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Will the Cabinet Member agree to join me to meet a delegation from the buskers to discuss the location of new busking pitches in the general West End area? And I hope you're on your feet soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your supplementary, Councillor Mitchell. Yes, I'm happy to meet them again. I've met them a few times already, but like I said, we need to wait for the next court case to happen before we can make it. But I'm happy to meet with you and your fellow councillors in the St James's ward to discuss further.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Eagleton. You couldn't hear the question. Robert, do you want to shout a bit louder?
Sorry, I was asking the Cabinet Member for Streets if he could provide me with an update on what the council is doing to tackle dockless e-bikes.
Hear it?
Just about. So the question was... So I'm happy today to announce for people who have read in the Standard that Flagship London Council, which is Labour-run Westminster, slaps Lyman Forest with £100 fines for abandoned e-bikes. That means that we are the first council. That means that we are the first council in the country anywhere to be issuing on-the-spot fines to the companies at £100 per ticket. And as they say on Blue Peter, to paraphrase, here's one we found earlier on Berkeley Square. Here's one we found earlier. Here's another one we found earlier. Here's another one we find earlier. Here's another one we find earlier. Here's another one we find earlier. Listen, the truth is that residents expect to find pavements clear and bikes in a bay, not bikes in their way. Your suggestion of sending council taxpayers' money to pay for to do the company's job for them was ridiculous. Was the idea of subsidising private profit. And I know that you've been jumping on what RBKC have been doing, which is, frankly, for the cameras. Because what we know it is it's a massive drain on council resources to seize bikes, to pick them up, to transport them, and to store them. The truth is, that is not a sustainable model. Ask them in a week. Ask them in another week. Ask them what's happening to the other issues on their streets that those resources should be going to. We expect over the next year to issue Lyman Forest, if they don't clean up their act, over £1 million worth of fines, which seriously threatens the business model that they have and gives them a massive incentive to act. This is in addition to 380 parking places that we provided across the city, up from exactly 0 under the Conservative administration. Remember that Hackney Council in 2019 were putting in e-bike bays already. Why did the Westminster Conservatives between 2019 and 2022 not look at what other councils were doing? The truth is that the Conservatives have absolutely no record to point to or stand on, and Westminster is taking leading action in the country to push the limits of the Highways Act to fine these companies.
Thank you. Supplementary? No supplementary. Councillor Leila Cunningham.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a question for the leader, especially in view of the motion that we're going to debate later. When I joined Reform, Labour councillors, my council colleagues, the Labour MP, and I believe the leader said the following: Reform-type politics doesn't belong in our community. Can the leader please clarify what exactly he meant by that? Because Reform is a registered democratic political party with millions of supporters, many of whom are living right here in Westminster, and actually polling on par or above Labour and the Conservatives combined. So what is it precisely about those voters and their views that Labour believes doesn't belong in Westminster?
Let's be very clear, as we will set out later tonight. We recognise that Reform is a legitimate political party, and we will fight them with legitimate political means. We will make the case to our local communities about what we believe the values of Westminster to be. And I think ultimately, Reform...
Answer the question.
I'm indeed answering the question. Reform is not a party that I think will be running the council next May. I think very clearly the voters will show them that they're not a party that represents many Westminster residents. We know that people are upset with the way in which the world is operating at the moment, and we know people are looking for easy answers.
What did you mean with reform-type politics? That's what I asked. I don't want a breakdown of what's going on in the world.
I'm not 100% sure of this precise quote that you're giving. You attributed it to everyone. But what we're also clear is that Reform is taking stances on issues that we do not agree with, as the motion sets out later tonight. We are, we are seeing attempts to divide people one against another, and we are very clear that we want to try and work to bring different communities together. We want to celebrate the diversity that Westminster has always had and has always benefited from. Communities coming together from different places, celebrating their heritage, but with more that unites them by being Westminster residents. And we are proud to stand up for those values, and ultimately the next election will be a test between those values and those of other parties who are challenging them, and we'll see what happens next May.
Supplementary?
As leader, you should
stand up if you're making a question.
Sorry.
Yes.
If you're leader, you should stand by what your colleagues next to you, the two colleagues next to you said, and what your Labour MP said. They said the exact words, let's show reform, let's show Councillor Cunningham that reform-type politics doesn't belong in our community. And you talk about inclusive communities, but inclusive surely doesn't mean just people who agree with Labour, does it? So can the leader confirm, does this council believe in political diversity and free expression, or only if it is approved opinion by Labour? Because if they really mean that, is that anyone who challenges the establishment, questions mass immigration, and puts the priorities of British people first... Sorry?
Councillor Hugg, will you answer the supplementary?
I haven't stopped my question. I'm sorry.
Well,
I was completely interrupted.
I'm sorry. I've asked Councillor Hugg
I
to
haven't
respond.
finished my question.
I think you have.
I have not.
If I say you have, you have.
Wow.
Ultimately, this is a democratic country, and but it is a democratic country that was built on values where we recognise that anyone who is lawfully here has rights. We recognise that our identity as people of Westminster, we celebrate the fact they've come from all over the world to build their lives here, and they built their lives and they built this community together. And we think that's something that Westminster always had cross-party support on for a long period of time, and that is being challenged. We have seen the rise of both the radical and the far right, and they are different in their different ways. But we are very clear that while yes, of course, all parties have democratic rights to stand for election and make their case for local people, I'm just very clear the people of Westminster are unlikely to agree with them. But obviously, Councillor Cunningham will obviously test that theory next May in Lancaster Gate and see whether the residents of Lancaster Gate support her or not in that question. So obviously, we look forward to seeing the results of that election.
Thank you. Councillor Maggie Carmen. Question, yes.
My question's for the Cabinet Member for Renters and Regeneration, and I believe the Council held its first ever private renters forum this week. And now this seems like a great way to engage with private renters in Westminster and bring them into decision making. So how did it go?
Yes, thank you very much. So you are right. We did hold our first ever private renters forum earlier this week in Bayswater, which went very well, and it was very well attended and a really constructive session. Are you not interested in hearing about private renters in Westminster? But yeah, it brought together tenants, council services and local advice organisations to discuss changes in Westminster's private rented sector, which of course is the largest in England. The event highlighted the council's new selective licensing scheme and gave officers the chance to speak directly with residents about the Renters' Rights Act and other related initiatives to support private renters, including our Tenants' Charter, our housing strategy, and our work on indoor air quality and energy efficiency. We have also been running weekly drop-in sessions to raise awareness and support both residents and landlords since we were elected. And this forum, the forum this week was a great opportunity to build on that engagement and hear the feedback firsthand. There was really strong participation from our partners, including Justice for Tenants, Z2K and Citizens Advice, alongside the Council's own Tenancy Relations Service. So residents were able to speak directly with these teams through a dedicated advice marketplace, and we have already received really positive feedback about the event. So I hope that we'll be hosting another one very soon.
Thank you. Supplementary?
No supplementary from me, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Elizabeth Hitchcock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Housing Services. Having recently met residents at Assembly House, I've been informed that the refurbishment works that began in 2021 are still ongoing with no end in sight. Furthermore, there's persistent leaking in Assembly House, which has resulted in one flat's entire electric system to be blown out and having to be replaced completely. Can the Cabinet Member please update me as to when the leaks will be fixed and when these works will finally be completed in order to put residents out of their misery?
Thank you, Councillor Hitchcock, for bringing this to my attention. I will speak to officers and bring an update to you as soon as possible.
Supplementary?
Okay, right. Furthermore, at Assembly House, there's been also evidence of missing ceiling tiles and exposed wiring in the halls, dug up flooring in the halls, which is a major safety hazard, and a woeful lack of communication by the council with the residents. Can the Cabinet Member please commit to better communication with the residents regarding the seemingly never-ending works?
Absolutely, I can commit to better communication. I will ensure that our teams are at Assembly House speaking to residents as soon as possible. I'd also like to ask you if you could raise this at the earliest rather than waiting for a public meeting, because this is very urgent.
Thank you. This is the end of the time allowed for questions.
Well done.
Agenda item 9, Councillor issues. I call Councillor Ed Pitt Ford to speak on his chosen topic of, quote, the importance of choosing the right domestic heating systems within Pimlico and why this matters for current residents and generations to come.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. PDHU, the Pimlico District Heating Undertaking, was incredible when it started. 70 years ago, it was futuristic. Recycling waste heat from Battersea Power Station, brilliant. Residents got affordable warmth and hot water in a way the rest of the country hadn't even imagined. But fast forward to today, and the system is showing its age. Pipes burst, heat disappears in transit, and residents are paying over the odds for something they cannot control. And that isn't fair. It's not fair for the tenants whose flats get flooded. It's not fair on residents who pay over the odds for their heating, and it certainly isn't fair on those who are injured or live in fear of the next catastrophic leak in their home. PDHU was designed like the coal-fired grid of its day, centralised, one-directional, and fossil-fuelled. Big source, big pipes, passive consumers at the end. Now look at our electricity system. Distributed, smart, flexible, rooftop solar, wind farms, batteries, even EVs feeding back into the grid. Cleaner, more reliable, and most importantly, it puts choice in people's hands. That's exactly what we should be aiming for. So what do? We decentralise, not by ripping out everything blindly, but by matching the right solution to each building in a phased transition. We allow people to play an active role in the electricity market to get the best pricing. When it is very windy, they can be paid to heat their homes. For some homes, the solution is small electric combi boilers. Simple, reliable, efficient, residents can control them. As no hot water is stored, no energy is wasted. They're affordable now, and as our grid decarbonises, they get automatically cleaner over time. In other blocks, air source heat pumps make sense. Sometimes at building level, sometimes flat level. It depends on the space and the layout. These put less pressure on the electricity grid, and in a world of increasingly hot summers, can be run in reverse to provide cooling. The key is flexibility. Each home, each block, each resident is different. One size fits all doesn't work. And here's the principle. The state shouldn't be telling people how to heat their homes. Our role is to enable, not dictate, to provide options, support, and guidance, but not to force one solution on everyone. So what am I asking for tonight? We have called in the Cabinet member decision, and I would ask the members sat on the Scrutiny Committee to run this by Cabinet again. The previous information requests by that committee haven't been fulfilled, so the decision was impossible to scrutinise. Councillor McAllister was rightly challenging officers on their reluctance to share details with residents, and it is equally concerning when the details will not be shared with councillors. I've asked for the financial model many times, and it has not been shared. Rachel Blake has said that leaseholders deserve transparency. Let's see that. I also asked Cabinet to dig deeper in their questioning. A projected average cost of more than £50,000 per home should be ringing alarm bells and not be an approval you want to be associated with. It will force people to take on more debt than they can afford. I spoke to a resident leaseholder in her late 70s who cannot afford, on her pension, to pay additional debt repayments to the council to cover these huge costs. It is completely fair that whilst assessing what she would need for later life, that it didn't include a £50,000 boiler. We still haven't had a good answer on why upgrading the electricity supply needs to cost over £70 million and whether it will need doing regardless of the solution selected. Councillor Barraclough was asking the right questions at the Cabinet meeting. Why are we not getting economies of scale? Why is it so much more expensive than you or I would pay? Picture Pimlico in 10 years. Warm homes, reliable heat, residents in control, carbon emissions falling. Not a centralised relic harking back to the 1950s. Not a system imposed from above. £185 million not ripped out of the local economy. A range of smart, local, efficient solutions delivering better service at lower cost. PDHU was bold in its day. Let's be just as bold now, using all the technology available to us to electrify and decentralise heating, to make consumers active and to introduce cooling, creating a modern, distributed, resident-first solution that Westminster can be proud of. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
That I fully agree with the wording of this motion. Choosing the right domestic heating system for Pimlico is incredibly important. It's also a hugely complex project, needing careful analysis and decision-making, rather than grandstanding and yet more of the sticking plaster fixes that got us into this mess. The PDHU supplies over 3,000 homes, as well as many local schools, businesses and community facilities. Yet it's the oldest system of its kind anywhere in England, and it is well beyond the point of needing a full replacement, as the residents know all too well. Leaks, disruption, constant and costly repairs. I know it is a nightmare for many residents on the affected estates, and I know how frustrating the situation has been. That is why finding a solution is so important, not just for current residents who are bearing the brunt of the failings, but for their children and all future residents of Pimlico. Despite how important this issue is, and the fact that the system was already years beyond its shelf life when we took over in 2022, almost nothing had been done. This aging heating system was allowed to be left to be maintained at just a basic level, with leaks worsening and no preparation for its future or improvement. There was no plan, no financial resource set aside for the project, and no formal decisions on any part of it by any Cabinet member until this administration. If this project is so important for generations to come, as Councillor Pickford says in his motion, why did the previous administration do almost nothing about it? In contrast, we acted quickly, immediately, beginning work on a strategic outline case, which was approved within a year, with dedicated resource and technical support. Since then, we have been working closely with residents and specialists to develop options for the future of the PDHU system, including many suggested by residents, and those have been evaluated using a robust critical success factor analysis. We've established a wide range of ways for residents to contribute to this process, including through working groups, and we've done door knocking and many other forms of communication to engage as many tenants and leaseholders as possible. We provided an independent technical advisor for residents, selected by residents, and together with residents, we are in the process of recruiting an independent infrastructure expert to support them in the next phase. That detailed work and engagement has brought us to now, with Cabinet last month approving 5 shortlisted options to be taken forward to the outlined business case. Those options are replacing just the pipework of the PDHU as a do minimum option, 2 variations of a river source heat pump, using Corey heat batteries and installing direct electric with cylinders. This represents a range of different options from a heat network to flat-by-flat solutions, and each is being analysed carefully for the outlined business case next year, including with a detailed financial analysis on both a heat network and a direct electric option. At the end of that process, one option will be taken forward to ensure that our residents have a heating system fit for the future. And in the meantime, we are doing everything we can to deal with leaks and other issues with the current system as they come up, implementing the recommendations of the independent review by Fair Heat that we commissioned to support this work. We know that discussions about a challenging project like this aren't easy, and not everyone will agree, but this administration is gripping the issue, and we are making sure that residents are properly engaged and have a strong voice in this process, which will be led by the evidence as well as local priorities. That is the right way to manage a project at the scale and sensitivity of this one, rather than rushing to premature conclusions in an attempt to win votes. I hope as many Pimlico residents as possible engage with us to ensure we can deliver the best possible heating system, and I look forward to continuing to work with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Begum. That concludes this item. We now move on to the remaining agenda items: party business, reports for full council, and notice of motion. The topics selected for debate and the names of those down to speak were tabled on the order paper sent to all earlier this week. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. Agenda item 10, party business. The opposition group have selected the topic tackling homelessness and rough sleeping in Westminster in the winter of 25 and 26 and beyond for debate as their business this evening, and this is set out in the order paper. I now call Councillor David Harvey to open the debate.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I can give you 6,500 reasons why it's important that we discuss and scrutinise the administration's policy. 4,000 people in temporary accommodation, and last year 2,600 people counted sleeping rough on our streets. We all want the same thing. If you've seen Shelter's recent excellent campaign, the young man turning a key on a new flat when he never thought anyone would ever take him seriously and give him his own home, or the young mum reunited with her own children in a new home. We all want those things: one story, person rehoused, a life rebuilt. But we need constructive discussion, because at the heart of the homeless and rough sleeping strategy, and I'm afraid the draft new housing strategy, there is potentially a massive void: accountability and measurement. And we've seen the quality of scrutiny going on for some of the party opposite this evening. We need to take questioning and challenge seriously, because we need to make these strategies work. Now, the new draft housing strategy reads more like a wish list rather than a real plan. Yes, the intentions are good, but the new strategy sets out clear goals, no measurable outcomes, no timescales, no accountability, and warm words and long lists of actions do not a strategy make. There are no targets, no financial frameworks, no milestones, no real sense of priorities. And Westminster residents deserve a strategy built on evidence, delivery and results. I'm very old-fashioned. I believe in the Aristotelian principle that virtue is not about emotion, it's about wise, measurable action. We have limited resources. We have to put them to the best effect. And we can't fix what we don't measure. And measurement is lacking. Now, in Vincent Square Ward, I can take you to examples of people who need that measurement because they need more answers. Go to the Piazza, see the rough sleepers, see the drug dealing and intimidation happening every evening. But walk down Victoria Street, meet the old lady in her 70s who is hidden homeless. Every evening she waits to meet a friend and she goes and sleeps on a sofa. No, this is not right, it's not tolerable. We all want to stop it. But the visible and hidden lives of the hidden homeless and the rough sleeping homeless are about exhaustion and fear. And so we need to understand in our policies what works and what doesn't. It's not enough just to produce very well-intentioned glossy brochures. We have to do the hard yards to help people rebuild the capacity to live well, to work, to contribute and to belong. Now, where the current homelessness and rough sleeping strategy, 25 to 30, fails, and it's full of good intentions, is it's so vague it can't be measured. If it can't be measured, you cannot deliver it. Read the strategy and you will find few measurable targets, no baseline data from which to track progress. There's no timetable for turning those big, dangerous, frightening hostels into smaller, supported houses that all the evidence shows will get results and which were our policy. There's no definition of success. There's no real public dashboard. There's no recognition of realism. The Westminster cannot absorb everyone drawn to central London. There's no acknowledgement of the collapse of visible policing and the rise of gang exploitation of those in hospitals. And the talks of partnership are vague. A plan that can't be measured cannot succeed. So our goal needs to be reassessed. And we can all agree, I think, of the need for real measurable process and progress. Real local prevention. Local connection has to count. We cannot house everyone who comes to Westminster. We must recognise deep local connections and people who've worked hard and want to live here and have earned their way in our community, wherever they started in life. We have to have the hostels replaced by smaller, effective units that really can help people back on a road to recovery. We need health, housing and policing together. We're not always getting that. We also need London-wide triage. The old capital letters, which failed because it told councils what to do, needs to be replaced by a union that cooperates through shared information and shared incentives, and Westminster could lead that. And we need transparency and learning together. We have other areas of policy too that directly diminish our ability to help the homeless. Councillor Swaddle's already pointed towards the question of short-term lets and the thousands of homes taken away from our market. And we have the failure to build new homes as well. Every new ribbon cut on a new flat was started by the Conservatives. Nothing new. Now, compassion and order, they're not opposites. They depend on each other. Without compassion, we have cruelty. Without order, compassion collapses into chaos. We have to have both. We cannot house the world in Westminster, but we can ensure that every pound spent helps move that hidden homeless lady, that rough sleeper, into a better life, towards a human flourishing. And without measurement and assessment, our strategies will fail to achieve that. And together, not in adversarial fashion, we must reframe both these strategies to ensure that what is measured gets done and we're truly effective. Fine words on their own are not enough, no matter how well-intentioned. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan Dean.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Westminster Population Needs Assessment, July 24, states that between April 2022 to March 23, 2,050 people were rough sleeping in Westminster. This is the highest across all authorities in England and accounts for 20% of the overall London total. 2/3 of rough sleepers had at least one additional support need, and just under half needed support for mental health issues. A report from the Centre for Homelessness Impact dated May 23 found that autism prevalence is estimated at between 2.3 to 18.5% amongst people experiencing homelessness versus 1 to 2% in the general population. It also states that hostels and other temporary accommodation can be particularly problematic for people with neurodevelopmental conditions. This Labour administration knows the scale of this problem, particularly for those with autism, because when the Conservatives were last in administration, we designed the Autism and Homelessness Toolkit, designed to help keep this cohort off the streets and into suitable accommodation. Unfortunately, this Labour administration had left rough sleepers to languish for over a year on the roundabout and other areas under the Westway and across the road in Little Venice on St Mary's Green. Councillor Kaplan and myself first informed the Council's outreach service and the police of a number of tents on TfL and council land under the Westway in March 2024. Outreach teams came then and many times subsequently to talk to the rough sleepers, but none seemed to take their offer of more suitable accommodation. The problem steadily grew worse over the next few months. Residents were reporting seeing men urinating and defecating from their windows in John Eyre and Amilcar Cabral courts, which were directly opposite the tent encampment. Nighttime fires were regularly lit under the Westway, with up to 20 men sitting and cooking their food, whilst intimidating local residents who were frightened to walk past them to get their shopping, or children going to and from school. Councillor Kaplan and I were making complaints to council officers almost on a weekly basis to get a possession order to move these unfortunate individuals into more suitable accommodation. By February 25, we had written to the council 8 times with virtually no response and had raised it at full council on 2 separate occasions. The number of locations with tents had grown, and enough was enough. We asked residents to sign our petition to clear the tent city at the Westway. Over the next month, there was much more media attention in print, on television, and on social media, which must have pushed Labour-run TfL and Westminster Council to act at last. Eventually, there was a court hearing on the 19th of March to remove the tents, and at the end of May 25, the tent encampment under the Westway near Paddington and those on St Mary's Green were gone. Why did it take so long to help these unfortunate men, many of whom probably had mental health and or neurodiverse issues? We must learn from this unfortunate episode and put in a better pathway where rough sleepers are not allowed to languish in squalor and residents are not afraid or feel intimidated to walk in their local area. Possession orders need to be served quicker and to cover a wider area. When we were shown the map of the possession order, we pointed out that it excluded the Westway next to Edgware Road and opposite the Trillium site in Little Venice. Our advice and input was ignored, and hence there are still a number of tents in that area, 9 months after we asked for them to be included. We need much more wraparound support, and given the sensory processing and social difficulties associated with autism, current hostel or temporary accommodation is unlikely to be suitable. We need to look at accommodation where the environment is less challenging, and maybe then outreach will be able to encourage more rough sleepers off the streets.
Thank you. Councillor Garcia Albert.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. How we support people when they have nowhere else to turn matters. As councillors, we see both sides of Westminster, the affluence that defines parts of our city and the quiet desperation of those who rely on our services. We know the cost of homelessness and rough sleeping, in human terms and in financial investment terms, is vast. Every pound we spend preventing a crisis saves several more in emergency accommodation, health costs, and enforcement. That's why our community hubs matter. They save money by preventing misery, investment in people and in prevention. In a hub, a parent fleeing domestic violence finds safety and support. Someone sleeping rough gets help with addiction, benefits, and a place to stay. A resident facing eviction gets legal advice before the crisis hits. People who end up homeless are often people who have simply run out of options. Our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy sets out a clear goal, that homelessness in Westminster must be rare, brief, and non-recurrent. At the heart of that ambition sit our community hubs, practical, people-centred, and built around early prevention. Community hubs are unifying spaces that bring services together and stop crises before they begin. Yet, the opposition call them duplication and vanity projects. This is dangerously wrong and shows how out of touch they are with the real need of Westminster. Community hubs embody the Labour approach: prevention, integrated support, and dignity in service delivery. Tackling homelessness and rough sleeping is about how we choose to treat one another when life gets tough. Community hubs are the front doors of fairness, places where housing, health, financial, and well-being support come together. so people can walk in with complex problems and walk out with coordinated support. And we know they are working. Last year, 937 cases of homelessness were prevented in Westminster, a 36% increase in prevention. Behind every number is a story, a family still in their home, a person who didn't have to sleep rough, a life not pushed into chaos. A quote from one of our residents: "I didn't know where to go when my landlord gave me notice. The hub gave me food, advice, and someone who stayed with my case. Without it, I would have been on the street." And that's what prevention looks like in practice. Staff based in the hubs say people experiencing homelessness can fall through the cracks, but we advocate for them and get them the right support. This is from St. Mungo's frontline team. And from The Exchange offers hot food, free activities, and a warm space where residents can get help with their bills, jobs, or just talk to someone who listens. That's from the North Paddington Food Bank. That's what joined-up support looks like. But the Conservatives have made it clear they don't value this infrastructure. If they ran this council again, the mood music suggests they would close these hubs, taking away a lifeline for those most in need. Closing them would undo progress, betray trust, and push more people into crisis, just as winter returns. Our responsibility is to keep the promise in our strategy, to invest in prevention, protect partnerships that work, and stand by residents. Because when someone says, "The hub gave me one place to go, without it, I'd have been on the street," that isn't policy jargon. That's a life made better. So let's keep that promise alive. Let's defend our community hubs, and let's build a Westminster where every person, regardless of postcode or hardship, has a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Rigby.
Lord Mayor, as we all know only too well in this chamber, Westminster faces significant homelessness issues. Homeless applications to the council have risen by more than a third in just the past year. And sadly, child poverty is linked to homelessness, as it is a major signal of homelessness later in life and goes hand in hand for families experiencing housing insecurity. Undoubtedly, the lack of housing is a driver of child poverty and homelessness, forcing families into challenging and difficult living conditions. As Councillor Harvey said, it is shocking to think that this Labour Council has not launched a single substantial new build of their own. The consequences of homelessness for children and young people are profound. A plan to tackle child poverty is a plan to prevent homelessness. Lord Mayor, child poverty is at record levels in the UK, with 4.5 million children, 31% living in poverty, whilst child homelessness has also reached a record high, with some 172,000 children living in temporary accommodation in England, as of October 2025, the highest number since records began. Here in Westminster, there are around 3,800 children homeless and living in temporary accommodation, which equates to nearly 1 in 3 children. 36% of children living in poverty. Or put another way, around 126 classrooms full of children who live in temporary accommodation, which is a sober thought. We therefore have one of the highest child poverty rates in London. The effect on children caught up in this situation can and does have severe long-term impacts on children's physical and mental health, education, and overall well-being. Effective interventions must tackle both the broad supply challenges as well as the specific individual circumstances of Londoners. The issues are complex, but a lack of action is both in the short and long term costly. Children have significant health, academic, and social risks if help is not forthcoming. Lord Mayor, collaborating with partners is a key driver, and one we should be fully engaging and supporting as a council, but with clear, measurable outcomes, as Councillor Harvey has alluded to. One such partner here in Westminster, who offers a pathway to a better future, is the Cardinal Hume Centre, who for over 40 years has supported people who are experiencing homelessness and poverty in Westminster. They offer truly personalised, targeted support based on each person or family unique situation. Compassion and understanding is at the core of their offering. In the last 12 months, they've supported more than 1,500 people, including 329 young people under the age of 24 and 836 families with children. Back in 2023, they shifted their focus, driven by the belief that the most effective way to prevent homelessness is to provide early, meaningful support to the children, young people, and families in need. Their bespoke wraparound service has yielded positive results. However, there is no one-size-fits-all solution to homelessness, but there is a need to treat everyone with dignity. The evidence is clear. However, childhood experiences of homelessness and poverty significantly increase the likelihood of poor life outcomes, including the risk of homelessness reoccurring in adulthood, an increased risk of becoming involved in the criminal justice or healthcare systems long term. 86% of rough sleepers with complex needs experience trauma as a child. This cycle of disadvantage can be intergenerational. Lord Mayor, we on this side of the chamber believe in compassion, joined with realism and accountability. I would argue there is more we can and should be doing through a multifaceted approach, shifting from a reactive to a proactive stance, supporting families to engage in our services, especially in early years, working with partners who have real lived experiences, and helping to directly influence family income by promoting and encouraging parents to enter the labour market. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Shearer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. St James's Ward has St James Ward has the unenviable reality that it has more rough sleepers than any other ward in Westminster and perhaps the UK. No one should be sleeping on the streets of Westminster. Every single person is a person too many. They are someone's son or daughter, brother or sister. Undeniably, they have fallen through the net of family security and they have been failed by the system, or both. Reducing rough sleeping is something that every councillor in this chamber will agree on. It's an imperative. It is perhaps our city's most visible failure and greatest challenge. Rough sleeping is complex, very complex, but that doesn't mean the council should shy away from making important decisions and be aspirational, bold and effective in its rough sleeping strategy. The KPIs are simple. The more rough sleepers helped off the streets into care pathways, the better. That's because the average age of a rough sleeper dying is 44 years old. There is a clock ticking on every rough sleeper, every day, every night. But Lord Mayor, as a councillor representing the ward with the most rough sleepers in London, I worry this council has lost its grip on tackling rough sleeping. It's become ineffective, it's lacking in ideas, and as one former senior officer from the team puts it, it's an uncoordinated mess. The numbers don't lie. Prior to the street count last night, there were 319 rough sleepers recorded in Westminster and 127 in St James's Ward. Until a recent writ was served, there have been over 30 tents at one time on Adelphi Terrace, just off the Strand. These numbers are materially greater than when the Conservative administration was in power. In fact, they've been ahead almost consistently. So what's going wrong? There are three areas that I want to highlight. Firstly, the approach. Everyone in this chamber has sympathy for every rough sleeper bedding down tonight. As I said earlier, every case is a tragedy. But whilst sympathy as a sentiment is a clear motivator here, sympathy alone cannot be the intervention, because on its own, that is ineffective. Under the Conservative administration, innovative approaches were set up, and ultimately, they delivered a tough love approach. ISU created an integrated approach, combining housing, policing, neighbourhood coordinator managers and specialist officers. This meant a holistic approach could be taken and results achieved faster. Ex-rough sleepers were recruited. In fact, at one point the team was headed by a previous rough sleeper, and the council worked tirelessly to cover all angles. Even Nikki Aitken as a leader was involved in the classification of spice. Nothing was off the table. All tools were in consideration. Innovation led to results and fast. My second point is an often misunderstood area which needs clarification: soup kitchens. We have a large soup kitchen operating from the Strand outside Zimbabwe House. Almost every weekday night, vans turn up, park on the pavement, set up tents, and feed anyone who turns up. All the professional advice from the major homelessness charities is very, very clear. Soup kitchens keep rough sleepers on the streets. They take no names, undertake no background checks. Critically, they build no trust between the client and the professional authorities. Let me be clear, I 100% believe in providing food for the rough sleeping cohort, but this should be via managed, trusted partners who can help bring people into care pathways and off the streets. This council needs to hold these soup kitchens to account. My third point is about hostels. I've had the privilege of talking about King George's Hostel in Great Peter Street before in this chamber. It's a hostel that is run by Single Homelessness Project, SHP, who are directly commissioned by Westminster. The building is owned by Riverside Housing. Despite the heroic efforts of the management team led by Rosie, King George's Hostel is a mess. The clients, some of the most complex male rough sleepers, previous rough sleepers in the city, are targeted every night by drug dealers. The resulting antisocial behaviour is ruining the neighbourhood and the lives of those in King George's. Throw in a building that's unfit for purpose and the outcome is tragic. Something needs to change fast. The commissioning contract is up for renewal in March next year. I urge this administration to do the right thing, to pause the contract, to examine the issues, to work to force with Riverside to create a state-of-the-art, aspirational building, one that will get results, one that rough sleepers want to live in. At this point in time, the council must be taking bold steps that will address the issues behind the numbers. So in conclusion, Lord Mayor, I hope this administration will start problem solving around our city's greatest issues, that they will start to take a practical stance, they'll get ambitious about what can be achieved. Because right now, the numbers are rising and this administration's sympathy alone isn't going to solve this complex crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aisha Less.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No one should have to live on the streets this winter, or any winter. In December last year, a record high of over 4,600 people were sleeping rough in London. Westminster's position in the centre of the city makes our situation even more complicated, causing homeless people to gravitate here from across the capital. As a result, our borough accounted for 20% of London's rough sleepers last winter, and we expect similar numbers of people will be affected this year. The opposition party will try to oversimplify the issue, but the reasons people end up living in these conditions are diverse and complex. Rough sleeping is so often a result of bad luck rather than poor choices. The fact is that many of our residents are one job loss, missed rent payment, or mental health crisis away from losing their home. That's why our approach is built on care, support and action. We believe everyone deserves help into safe, suitable accommodation, and we're working tirelessly to make that happen. Council outreach teams are on the ground 365 days a year, engaging with rough sleepers and working closely with partner agencies to offer support. Last month alone, 77 referrals were made to accommodation pathways and 48 referrals to partner services for support around mental health, physical health and adult social care interventions. We're also tackling persistent hotspots with targeted interventions. On Park Lane, officers have provided support to TfL with possession order enforcement, and 24/7 security is now in place. We've offered support to the Royal Parks at nearby Apsley House, and outreach teams visit the site regularly. On the Westway, the main encampment site was cleared in May, fenced off and has not been reoccupied since. At the Marylebone flyover, we have been pushing TfL to get another possession order. On Dalkeith Court, the housing and street-based intervention teams issued trespass letters and community protection orders, and the encampment was removed in late October. On Oxford Street, we've engaged closely with the Home Office, TfL and the GLA to provide specialist support for people who have no recourse to public funds or have unclear entitlements. And at the Adelphi Terrace, a possession order has been granted and officers are holding weekly meetings with connection with St Martin's and St Mungo's. We regularly undertake citywide street counts to ensure rough sleeping data is current, and this feeds into targeted support and decision-making. Looking ahead, we're also exploring long-term improvements to design out tent pitching and prevent future encampments. We've done a lot already, but there's much more to do as we continue to get people off the streets and into accommodation and programmes that will support their recovery. Our officers and commissioned services are experts at supporting those in need and will never give up on people. So when it comes to homelessness and rough sleeping, our message is clear. No one should have to live on the streets, and our teams are here to help. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I will now call Councillor Lisa Begum to reply.
Thank you, Lord. With winter around the corner, I can assure all members that making sure no one has to be left out in the cold is my top priority as the Cabinet Member for Housing Services. Homelessness and rough sleeping are defining challenges for London right now, and nowhere is that more visible than here in Westminster. Our central location means we have always had some of the highest levels of rough sleeping in the country, and over the past 3 years, the number of households approaching us for help has more than doubled. In 2021 to 22, the council received 1,910 homelessness applications. By last year, that figure had risen to 3,856, with main duty acceptances tripling to over 1,100 households. This trend is happening across the country, and London in particular, driven by soaring rents, limited affordable housing, and renters having their tenancies ended. So we very much welcome the Renters' Rights Act, which will abolish Section 21, no-fault evictions, which are all too often the cause of homelessness. This is something we have lobbied for years, and this government is finally acting. In the face of rising demand, this administration has acted decisively. We've expanded our Housing First programme, providing homes with intensive wraparound support for those with complex needs, and a successful government bid means 20 new self-contained flats are now being delivered for former rough sleepers. This Labour administration is building more social homes than the opposition, with six new in the pipeline. With 6 new sites in the pipeline.
6 new sites.
No,
you didn't.
I think my mic must be off because I've just mentioned 6 new sites in the pipeline. We launched our street-based. Yeah, we are. Yeah. We launched our street-based intervention team, which is getting results, recently supporting 9 people into accommodation and helping reduce antisocial behaviour. We've brought the Housing Solutions Service in-house, giving us greater control over our services and making sure people get the right help before they reach crisis point. We're investing at record levels. We're investing at record levels 8.2 million of council funding this year, more than any other local authority, alongside securing tens of millions through government grants. And we're expanding the amount of good quality temporary accommodation with 1,120 properties secured for this purpose last year alone. And we no longer use capital letters because they fail to secure any accommodation. All of this work comes together. All of this work comes together in the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy we launched this year, which sets out a vision for preventing homelessness and rough sleeping at the earliest opportunity through the appropriate support and housing. While work to put the right policies in place to tackle homelessness is ongoing, right now my mind is focused on the situation over the winter, which we know is the toughest time of the year for those facing rough sleeping in particular. The most recent street count showed that over 300 people are sleeping rough on Westminster streets on any one night. We are doing everything we can to support these individuals to come in from the cold and find long-term housing solutions. Through the Severe Weather Emergency Protocol, or SWEP, we open emergency accommodation when temperatures drop to 0 degrees, often before other boroughs. Last winter, we provided 268 SWEP beds. And this year, we've increased that by 18% to provide well over 300 spaces across hotels, communal venues, and faith settings. SWEP isn't just about shelter for a night. It's a route off the streets. Everyone coming into SWEP provision is offered to follow-up support and assistance to find a route out of homelessness, in line with the person-centred, trauma-informed, and place-based approach our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy sets out. We have built a comprehensive winter offer with our partners, St Mungo's, The Passage, Connection at St Martin's, the NHS, police, faith groups and others, ensuring a coordinated, compassionate response that prioritises safety and dignity. Furthermore, this Labour government has done more in less than 1 year in government than the Tories did in over a decade by introducing breakfast clubs, funded childcare and Best Start family hubs. Now, going back to the colder months.
Thank you.
Finally, as we enter the colder months and well beyond, our focus is clear: tackling homelessness and rough sleeping through prevention, partnership and compassion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I have an apology to make to the council. I've failed.
I was thrown by the fact that she went, then lead it back to her on the auto.
I'm going to call Councillor Barnes to speak now, and I'm going to allow Councillor Begum to respond to any issues that are raised by Councillor Barnes that she hasn't covered in her previous speech. Yeah. Councillor Barnes, and apologies.
Lord Mayor, in fairness, the apology is mine. You did quite the right thing. I apologise for causing any disruption. Lord Mayor, colleagues on both sides of the chamber. My colleagues on this side have dealt positively with the issues of homelessness tonight. I want to be more direct about the issues of rough sleeping. Lord Mayor, public data can take a while to collect, and it's often a process that requires a huge amount of public effort. Indeed, the national government review that takes place every year of rough sleeping in the autumn has yet to publish on 2025. So we are still looking at the data from 2024, which was amended in only July of this year. After such a diligent review, I'm sure everyone in this chamber would agree that it is a disgrace and a tragedy that Westminster was the local authority with both the highest number of people sleeping rough on that single night of assessment in autumn 2024, and worse still, it had had the largest increase in the entire country over the number for 2023. That 2024 number is indeed the highest that has ever been recorded anywhere in the country. It is shameful that 388 troubled lives, compared with 277 in 2023, were counted, an increase of 111 people, and almost double that recorded in 2022, when this side of the chamber were last in charge. The government review noted that having the highest number of people sleeping rough was due to the services offered here in excess of those in the rest of central London, the presence of existing rough sleepers and access to drug markets. These are magnets to rough sleepers from other parts of London and indeed from overseas. In short, the external assessment clearly stated that the gigantic and rapid rise in rough sleeping in Westminster was due directly to the policies of this council. The council has messed up. Westminster residents are once again left paying for their failure. In this case, we are all paying, with more antisocial behaviour, more crime, more human waste on the streets, more no-go areas of public squares such as Cavendish and Hanover in my own ward. As Councillor Swaddle noted earlier tonight in his opening questions, this council's idea of fairness is always to leave locals paying more. On our streets, we can see this writ large. So how to address this? We need to limit services to those with stronger connections to Westminster. We need to move on long-term rough sleepers and crack the gangs that traffic them here. We need to be more effective in tackling drug dealing in our work with the police and charities and other authorities. The current council's policies have exaggerated these issues. A Conservative council would tackle them. Speaking in 2023, ahead of the adoption of the Fairer Westminster motion that year, the Labour administration made the following declaration: "We have a duty of care towards vulnerable and trafficked adults in our borough. Noble may be, but misguided. They are exacerbating, not solving, the problem we all see. We would honour our duty to the residents of Westminster too, a sentiment missed by the Labour declaration at that time. Look at our streets and you see the trafficked adults can be found across the West End, most obviously on the frequent returns of the encampments on Park Lane. As Councillor Dean pointed out earlier, you can also see them under the Westway. As Councillor Shearer pointed out, you can see them by Charing Cross in St James. Colleagues in this chamber will be able to name areas in every ward where this disgraceful scene continues. Despite their proclamation, this council is failing the vulnerable trafficked adults on our streets and is failing our residents. We know that many are the victims of criminal gangs, but this council's policies are not just tolerating it, they are encouraging it. Far from being the city of sanctuary, this is the city of slavery. It is made worse as failing Labour councils such as Haringey and Tower Hamlets actively encourage rough sleepers to move to Westminster, and this council, led by the same party, applies no pressure to stop them from doing so. As Councillor Harvey has said, we cannot indefinitely absorb the failures of Labour councils across London, but that is what this administration is tolerating and condoning. This administration has congratulated itself throughout the speeches this evening on its multiple declarations, policy and strategy documents, but its failure, in fact, is on the ground for all to see. The best interests of those sleeping rough, particularly those being trafficked, as well as our residents, would be served by concentrating the scarce resources that we have on those with a greater connection to Westminster and encouraging Labour's failing councils elsewhere in London to look after their own vulnerable residents first, rather than dumping them here. It is unfair on them, it is unfair on us. It is a failure of this council. Thank you.
I will allow Councillor Begum to respond to the points made by Councillor Barnes.
Lord Mayor, I don't recognise a lot of what Tim Barnes is saying.
Oh, let me take you to Trafalgar Square.
Councillor Barnes, you'll...
Councillor Barnes has mentioned a lot of fabrications. All I can say is that we have... All I can say is that due to consecutive Tory governments and the Tory government being the architects of austerity and the cost of living crisis, that is why we see people on the streets, and that is why we're having to deal with it. It's your problem. You started it.
Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 13, notice of motion. The motion this evening has been submitted by the majority party and is entitled Standing United Against the Rise of the Far Right and in Support of Inclusive Communities. There will be a single debate on this motion, which is tabled on the order paper. I will then call the vote. As mentioned previously, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper. I will try to stick to it. And each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor Adam Hugg to move the motion.
Lord Mayor, this motion speaks to one of the most profound challenges facing the cohesion of our city and our country: the rise of far-right extremism, anti-migrant rhetoric and incidents of hate that threaten the fabric of our communities. In September, I'm going to get to that if you give me a moment. In September, over 100,000 people marched in London under the banner of Unite the Kingdom, led by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. A rally that descended into violence, leaving 26 police officers injured and amplified dangerous myths like the so-called Great Replacement theory. Far-right talking points are no longer being confined to the margins of society anymore. They're being shouted in the streets and echoed online by influencers with millions of followers and amplified by some of the platforms themselves. Lord Mayor, history teaches us something important. The rise of the far-right never happens in a vacuum. When people face hardship, when wages have stagnated, when housing becomes unaffordable and public services stripped back, fear and frustration grow. And into that vacuum step those who offer scapegoats instead of solutions, pointing the fingers at migrants, minorities, and anyone perceived as different. Hate crimes have surged, almost 116,000 recorded in England and Wales last year, with a 19% spike in offences targeting Muslims, and the CST have reported a sharp rise in anti-Semitic incidents that were 56% higher in 2024 than in 2021. As of this spring's Home Office religious hate crime statistics, 45% of crimes targeted Muslims and 29% of them targeted Jews, despite these faiths comprising only 6.5% and 0.5% of the UK population, respectively. I've spoken to too many residents and faith leaders who tell me that their communities are becoming more fearful about going about their daily lives, fears that have been heightened by the terror attacks at Manchester and Peacehaven. The social guardrails against racism are being worn down. For example, we are seeing truly shocking attempts to deny the rights of our global majority fellow citizens to define themselves as British or English, not only for those who have become naturalised in their own lifetimes, but for their children, grandchildren and beyond. And I mean, given Suella mused that it might take up to 6 generations, should I worry that I'm not English now? I mean, I'm only the 5th generation from an immigrant hug, but you know, maybe this means I get away with it. This madness has to stop. We are very clear that there is more that politicians from all parties can and should do better at this point in time. But it was deeply concerning to see the Conservative National Front bench propose deporting our friends and neighbours with ILR or settled status if they happen to earn below £38,700, or if they or their dependents, including British citizens, had ever claimed any form of state support or ever lived in council housing, all in the name of achieving some concept of cultural coherence, for some reason being defined by Katie Lamb. We were relieved that this suggestion has been put on ice for now, but that it was even put forward is a deeply worrying sign of where our politics is right now. As I said in my first council speech as leader of this council, I'm proud of Westminster's history as a place of arrival for many generations of people who've come to build their lives in this country. Our city is home to over 180 different nationalities speaking 150 different languages, from long-established Irish, Jewish and Caribbean communities to newer neighbours from Bangladesh, Somalia, across the EU and the Arab world. We celebrate that diversity and work every day to strengthen the bonds of community that bring people together and unite us as Westminster. This motion is about turning our values into action. It sets out 6 clear commitments. Firstly, that we will work closely with local partners and communities affected by hate or discrimination to ensure that the council is visible, consistent and responsive to local needs. When people feel targeted, they need to know the council stands with them. Secondly, we will establish a cross-community working group bringing together residents, young voices, faith leaders and community representatives. This is about developing practical and community-led strategies to strengthen social cohesion. Thirdly, we will champion and promote local initiatives that celebrate Westminster's diversity, cultural festivals, interfaith gatherings, youth programmes. Learning from the legacy of Carnival and Pride, these events are not just about celebrations, but about sending a message to those who seek to divide us. Fourth, we will clearly condemn racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and far-right extremism. And we will continue to work with the police and community partners to ensure that related crimes are tackled swiftly and the victims are dealt with, treated with dignity and respect. And finally, we will deliver a new community equality strategy focused on improving council services, ensuring early support for those at risk and strengthening our role in promoting community cohesion. This motion is our opportunity to lead by example, to stand with our communities and show that Westminster will not be a place where hate goes unchallenged. Lord Mayor, I move this motion.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Ryan Dew to second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Westminster is a wonderfully diverse city, and as one of the many people from an ethnic minority background who live in this city, I'm pleased to be seconding this important motion tonight, reaffirming our commitment to fighting racism in all of its forms. From all the different communities that Councillor Hugg has referred to the influence that we see as we walk around our streets, the shops, the restaurants, the artwork, and more, there's nowhere that celebrates diversity quite like Westminster. And I'm proud to be able to do my small part in strengthening that as a cabinet member in this council, doing what we can to celebrate our diverse communities. Just as one example, our community event fund, set up by this administration, has supported 83 local events since 2023 to strengthen community cohesion. From Marylebone to Pimlico South, Queen's Park to St James's, we've celebrated our communities all across our city. But more widely, we must celebrate the important role that immigration plays in some of our key sectors, not least the NHS and the care sector. And in fact, it was the NHS that saw my parents move to this country from India in the 1990s. 2 young, qualified doctors starting a new adventure on the other side of the world with 2 young children. And my mum told me that when she first arrived in Bridgend in South Wales, it was very rare to see other ethnic minorities. In fact, my dad told me that when they had to go to buy spices and masala for their cooking, they sometimes had to drive as far as Southall in London. But despite being so rare in South Wales at the time, they were welcomed with open arms by everyone in the community. And they said they've only ever encountered kindness everywhere that they've lived, including Stockport, where I grew up. Sadly, that hadn't always been the case for immigrants to the UK. And in fact, my relatives who moved to London in the 1960s had told me a very different form of welcome that they received, the racism that they faced on the streets. But as a country, we grew up and we left such nastiness behind us. Or so we thought. And this is why the recent rhetoric and growing tensions have been so upsetting to see. Now, I've, of course, experienced racism in various times in my life. But when I was younger, such events were few and far between, isolated incidents that were not accepted by society. And now we can turn on the TV, we can go on social media, and we can see people in position of influence regularly saying things that are borderline and sometimes explicitly racist. People who shamelessly exploit genuine concerns held by people in this country around cost of living, housing, jobs, and more, and exploit that for their political gain. But this distraction technique, using hate and racism to divide our communities, will not work, and it certainly won't work in a city as diverse as Westminster. And what is it that this rising far-right rhetoric leads to? It leads to incidents like Sarah Pochin, Reform Member of Parliament for Runcorn, an area not far from where I grew up, going on TV and thinking it's acceptable to say explicitly racist comments, and I'm not afraid to call them racist. Saying them and thinking that there'll be no consequences, saying them and her own party leader refusing to call those comments what they are. It leads to a Conservative MP, Chris Philp, but first being unsure as to whether he should call it racist. And I'm not for a second suggesting that this is something that those parties believe. In fact, far from it. It's my strong belief that not a single person in this room would condone those comments that were made. But how have we let it come to this? How have we let it get to where a sitting Member of Parliament can go on TV and say such things as if we're back in the 1960s once again? I'm pleased to see that the Leader of the Opposition will be talking on this motion tonight, and I'm pleased to see that no amendment was tabled. I really hope that our Conservative and Reform colleagues opposite will be able to support this motion tonight, acknowledging the concerns that our communities are feeling and the actions that we as a council and local community leaders should be taking in this difficult time. I recently spoke to my mum about her views on this growing discontent. Her response was that nobody deserves to live in fear. And I couldn't agree more. No community should live in fear of racism, of aggravated attacks, or in fear of other communities who don't look like them just because people who seek to divide us made them feel as though they should. All in their attempt to try to ignore and distract from the real issues at hand. We have a proud history of immigration in this country. We have a proud history of diversity in this city, and we have a responsibility as councillors to stand up and show leadership and to support our communities. And so tonight, I call on all councillors in this chamber to show that leadership and support this motion. Thank you.
I call Councillor Lisa Begum to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to speak in strong support of this motion. The rise in far-right activity, the use of anti-migrant language, and the increase in hate incidents across the country are deeply concerning, and they demand a clear and united response from all of us. Westminster is home to people from more than 180 nationalities, speaking over 150 languages. That is something we should take immense pride in. From the Irish and Jewish families who helped build communities in Maida Vale, to the Caribbean, Bangladeshi, Somali, Moroccan, Kurdish, and Arab families who have enriched neighbourhoods across Harrow Road, Church Street, and Pimlico. Westminster's identity has always been shaped by its diversity. Our city is stronger because of it. But today, that unity is being undermined, not by migrants, but by those who seek to divide communities for political or personal gain. We've seen figures such as Nigel Farage, Sarah Pochin, and Tommy Robinson, and even high-profile personalities like Elon Musk use their platforms to spread inflammatory and misleading rhetoric. Their interventions, alongside the rise of groups like Reform, have helped create an increasingly toxic national debate that distracts from the real issues facing people. The far right spreads lies about migrants, claiming that people seeking asylum are living in luxury at taxpayers' expense. These are deliberate falsehoods designed to provoke resentment and hatred. The truth is that most people seeking asylum are fleeing war, persecution, and unimaginable hardship. They are not looking for privilege, only for safety, dignity, and the chance to rebuild their lives. Alongside this, we are seeing a disturbing rise in Islamophobia, both online and in our communities. Muslims are being vilified simply for practicing their faith, and Islamophobic narratives are being used as a political tool to divide people further. This must be called out for what it is: dangerous, unacceptable, and completely un-British. But racism does not only exist in its most extreme forms. For many people of colour, it shows up in quieter, everyday ways, in the mispronunciation or dismissal of names, in assumptions about where we are really from, or surprise at our presence in certain spaces. These may seem minor, but together they reveal something fundamental, that racism is not just about individual acts of hatred, but something built into the very fabric of our social and cultural systems. If we are serious about tackling it, we must be honest that racism exists not only on the fringes, but within our institutions, our workplaces, and sometimes our own habits and assumptions. Real change requires all of us to listen, to learn, and to challenge these biases wherever they appear. Let us also be clear, it is not migrants. Let us also be clear, it is not migrants who have caused the pressures on our NHS, our housing system, or our schools. The real cause is years of underinvestment and austerity imposed by successive Conservative governments. When our hospitals are under strain, it is not because of the overseas doctors and nurses who keep them running, but because of a lack of long-term planning and funding. When families cannot find an affordable home, it is not because of immigration, but because social housing was sold off and never replaced. And when our young people face fewer opportunities, it is not because of who moved into their neighbourhood, but because austerity stripped away investment in education and youth services. The Conservative government's austerity policies were a political choice, one that weakened our public services and deepened inequality. Blaming migrants for those failures is not only wrong, it is dangerous. It divides communities and distracts from the real issues this country needs to face. Here in Westminster, we know better. We see every day the enormous contribution our migrant and minority communities make. As carers, business owners, teachers, and key workers, they are part of the very fabric of our society. This motion reaffirms Westminster's commitment to being a safe, inclusive, and welcoming borough. It strengthens our promise as a borough of sanctuary to stand up against racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia in all their forms. But it also reminds us that we cannot be complacent. We must continue to work with residents, faith leaders, and community organisations to build understanding and resilience, and to ensure that everyone who calls Westminster home feels safe, valued, and proud to belong here. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I now call Councillor Paul Swaddle to speak. I'm calling Councillor Paul Swaddle.
Lord Mayor, let me start where we agree. Westminster is a diverse and proud city. People from every background live side by side here, and we stand united against extremism from the far right, the far left, and any form of religious hatred. No one in this chamber should disagree with this principle. But residents in Westminster expect more from the council than slogans and symbolic motions without substance. They expect leadership, action and results. This is where Labour is letting down people here in Westminster, in City Hall and in government. Because while Labour lectures others on tolerance, they have failed to tackle the hate marches that have seen Jews intimidated on our streets and scared to leave their homes. They've turned a blind eye to far-left anti-Semitism and those who spread division under the banner of protest. That is not leadership, it's cowardice dressed up as a principle. This motion should be a unifying moment, an opportunity to celebrate the strength, resilience and success that London's diversity has created. But instead, Labour have made it another exercise in student union politics, high on self-righteousness, short on substance. While Labour passes virtue-signalling motions, our residents face the real consequences of their inaction. Across our streets, residents are seeing a city slipping backwards. Crime up, antisocial behaviour unchecked, pavements blocked by e-bikes, the basics of clean and safe and orderly streets ignored time and time again. People do not feel safe, and Labour has no answers. CCTV might make for a nice press release, but cameras don't nick people. What Westminster needs is a visible enforcement, people on the ground, not behind a desk. Short-term let's a similar story. Residents know the 90-day rule is being flouted on an industrial scale. They all see flats turned into hotels, neighbours replaced with strangers, while Labour wrings its hands and looks the other way. And then there is Oxford Street. They've handed over control of one of the nation's most famous streets to be vandalised by Sadiq Khan. No proper consultation, no plans for where buses will operate, no thought for disabled access or older residents. The result, confusion, disruption and silence when people ask for answers. Meanwhile, Labour talks endlessly about fairness. They waste taxpayers' money on vanity projects and symbolic motions while preparing a tax-raising budget. The Chancellor has already paved way for new taxes, even reviving a talk of mansion tax that would hit people in Westminster hard. When Labour say fairness, what they really mean is higher taxes for working residents. So yes, the Conservatives will stand against hate, but we will also stand against hypocrisy, complacency and failure. Westminster deserves better. Our residents do not want more political theatre. They want results, safer streets, cleaner neighbourhoods and a council that enforces rules for everyone. So let's be clear. If Labour will not take responsibility for the chaos, then the Conservatives will. We will restore visible enforcement back on our streets, hold services to account and stand up for residents who keep this city running. Because whether it's in City Hall, in Westminster, City Hall or Downing Street, Labour are failing. We won't stand by while our city falls further behind. We will stand up for Westminster and for everyone who calls it home from wherever they may hail.
Councillor Ruth Wood.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm not scheduled to have a word, but I wanted to have one. I'm disappointed. I'm not going to address the issues raised by the Leader of the Opposition speech. I found greatly disappointment. I just wanted to stress the vital importance of the role the faith bodies play in this city and the relationship between them and this council, which began long ago on the other side when they were here and have been continued through the years. There is no reason why we can't be united on this issue. We had the most remarkable meeting of Westminster Faith Exchange last Thursday. A rabbi from West London Synagogue spoke alongside a clergy person from a clergy woman from, let's name names, Matthew Turchin, Rabbi Matthew Turchin from West London Synagogue, the Reverend Prebendary Claire Dowding from St John's Rossmore Road, and A.S. Duberi from the Regent's Park Mosque. At the other side of the exchange were Councillor Less and officers Christine Mead and Serena Simon from communities, talking about what the council was doing to people who were talking about what their faith organisation was doing. The Lord Mayor came, we had it in the Lord Mayor's parlour, the Lord Mayor came and showed support, the leader came and showed support. We've had support from Councillor Robertson, Councillor Aiken in the past and back beyond. The only thing that was wrong with that wonderful meeting and the discussion afterwards, that not enough people were there. Councillors are always welcome. If you can be at the next one, it would be wonderful. But the most important thing is that the faith organisations are working in the communities, across the faiths, with each other, and working with this council. And I do hope that that will be supported and continued. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
And I call Councillor Hogue. Yes, okay, Councillor Kaplan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I haven't intended to speak tonight, and I'll be fairly sort of brief, but I want to echo quite a few of the comments that Councillor Bush just made, because they are very important. And they are the sort of comments that would unite this whole chamber. The reason why I, and I suspect the majority group, can't vote for this motion is because it should have been done in a completely different way. And I remember on a number of occasions in the past, and Councillor Bush was referring to them, where we could have had a cross-party motion proposed by yourselves, seconded by us, with an agreed set of words. That's how we've done things in the past, and that's how we should be doing things in the future on matters so serious as this. The word partnership was used. There absolutely should have been partnership. We virtually have unanimity, and a couple of speakers said that earlier on. But there's no... Let me finish, Councillor Noble. There's no unanimity if there's no approach whatsoever from the majority party to the minority party. That's how you have to do things. We could have had absolutely a joint motion. I don't think there would have been any division between us, but you chose not to do that. And when some of your colleagues start throwing in, it's all the Tories' fault, it's all the fault of austerity, there is no chance that we can have unanimity on such a serious issue when you bring in things which frankly are not relevant to the points that you wish to get across. I'm sorry, you've approached it in the wrong way. Therefore, we cannot be with you. That does not mean that we do not support the vast majority of the things that Adam said earlier on. There's not a disagreement on these things, but there has to be a way in which it's approached in this chamber. It's been done before. Councillor Bush referred to it in terms of the faith exchange, which I was proud to have some early involvement with some years ago. Councillor Bush and I go back a few years on these sort of matters. But there are ways in which we do these things. There's been a lot of atrocities that have occurred around the UK over many, many years. I'm not going to go into sort of detail, but Councillor de Moldenberg and I were sadly far too close to a very recent incident that occurred in our hometown. But I'm not going to dwell on that tonight. I'm just going to make the point that we are willing to work with you. We've always been willing to work with you on such matters. But you have to come to us, you have to agree a partnership, a joint motion, that's the way forward. So we're not opposing the motion, not going to do that. We are going to abstain on this motion, and we're going to do it simply because you did not take the time, it would have been quite easy to do, to talk to us, and we could have agreed something jointly, which would have been much more powerful. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg, for you to respond to the motion.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I want to just go to what Councillor Bush said. I was very pleased to attend the Faith Exchange this week, and one of the most hopeful things I heard was from Ayaz from Regent's Park Mosque talking about how he had worked in partnership with the Liberal Jewish Synagogue and St John's Wood Church to come together, united as a faith community, to tackle the issues they were having with both Al-Muhajirun and the far right outside their mosque. That was communities of faith coming together because there is more that unites us as Westminster than divides us, and that was inspirational when I heard it, and that is what we want to build on going forwards. I think we have to be honest that people are scared right now. People are scared that stuff is happening in our public discourse that we have not seen for generations. The progress that we were making in the 90s, in the 2000s, on these issues is under threat and challenge for the first time, which is why we put down this motion, because we wanted to send a clear message, we hoped a united message, on behalf of the City of Westminster. And I know Councillor Kaplan talks as if there were partnership motions. There is obviously a history of one motion that was done in such a way, which was when I was very happy to support Councillor Aiken to work jointly on our anti-Semitism declaration back in 2018. Anti-Semitism is a scourge. Anti-Semitism is an issue that I spend an awful lot of time working on with officers, with the police, trying to support our Jewish community here in Westminster. And we were able to unite around that. Whether that comes from the far left, far right, wherever in society, it is a scourge and it needs to be dealt with. But it is one element of racism, and we need to be clear that this council is united against all racism. And I do not hear, I never hear from the opposition the same concern about our Muslim friends and neighbours around the rise of Islamophobia that we hear. I'm sorry. So we have to be clear. There is more that we can all do together, and I will hope that in the issues that are outlined here, we can that we can come together. But it is disappointing that you are not able to join. Well, because you guys need to stand up.
It's outrageous that you play politics with this.
I'm sorry. Paul, the people you have joined are talking in the press about deporting our friends and neighbours. That's your values now, clearly.
What about Hizbut Tahrir?
Absolutely. They are abhorrent. I've always stood against the Paul. They should not. They have been opposed for all my life. Paul. You know that. You're playing politics.
Okay. Let's calm down a little. Let's calm down, please. Let's calm down.
So,
all of you, please. Let's calm down. Councillor Hugg, please continue.
So we are clear. There are real concerns here, and we hope to be able to come together about these things. And we will stand up for all of our communities in Westminster who are facing it. But we'd like to see evidence of that. And we are very clear that we are disappointed that you'll not be able to come together on this. On this important issue. But the Council will get on with delivering the coherent, concrete steps that we have set out in this motion to deal with issues from a coarsening of our politics that is happening at the moment. And as I said at the beginning, there are issues on all sides of politics that we need to address. But there are real issues at the moment where people's Britishness and Englishness is being denied or intellectualised away. We're seeing a rise in hate crime on our streets affecting all of our communities, and we need to be standing up against that. This is why this motion was put down. It is disappointing that the opposition is too divided to sign up to it, but we will get on and delivering on these issues. Thank you very much. But you never did on any of your motions, even on stuff like this, bar one, which we've supported. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As no amendment has been submitted, Louise, I've allowed two, and I would have allowed you had you put your hand up before Councillor Hugg started to speak. But thank you. Okay.
The threat from the two Jews is coming from the far left. It goes back to Jeremy Corbyn and his ilk.
Please,
and the far left
I would have let you speak.
Is as much responsible as the far right. So if you added the words, the rise of the far right and the far left, we could have agreed with you.
Thank you. Okay. As no amendment has been submitted, we'll now vote on the motion as laid out in the agenda by a show of hands. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Those abstaining?
No, you put this motion forward so you can shout that out. You put this motion forward so you can shout that out.
Thank you. I declare the motion carried. We now move to voting on the two reports listed on the agenda. The first vote is on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 11 entitled Constitutional Update London Squares Preservation Act 1931. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendation approved. We will now move on to the vote on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 12 and entitled Programme of Meetings 2026-27. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendation approved. That concludes the council meeting. Thank you and good night.